Sadiq Khan has been put on the spot after he announced masks would continue to be mandatory on London buses and trains beyond so-called Freedom Day. The London Mayor has asked Transport for London, TfL, to make mask wearing a condition of carriage even after legal restrictions have been lifted on July 19. But some Twitter users hit out at Mr. Khan over the enforcement of the measure. One said, "This is all well and good, but how will it be enforced? Already around a third of the travellers I see are not wearing a mask, and that's with the national requirement. I'm not sure that this will make any difference." Another wrote, "But will there be enough staff to enforce it for those not wearing a mask without a legitimate reason? Last week when I was on the tube only a handful of people in the packed carriage were wearing a mask." A third asked, "Can you enforce it the way you enforce catching fare dodgers, please?" Another commented, "Every time I've travelled on the tube in the last few months 95% of people aren't wearing a mask anyway, so I don't think this will make any difference." A fifth said, "It would help if this was actually policed. Having posters and messages about wearing masks is not enough. Far too many people, young men, 20 to 40 years, in particular, not wearing them on tubes now." Another wrote, "At least half the passengers on any tube ride I've taken recently aren't wearing masks or have pulled the mask under their chin as soon as they've got a seat. If it's not being enforced now, how's it going to be enforced next week?" One more added, "How is this going to be enforced? From what I saw last week or so, a large amount of people not wearing masks, completely unchallenged." Mr. Khan said he was not prepared to put tube, tram and other transport users in the capital at risk by removing the rules on face coverings after so-called Freedom Day. He said, "I've repeatedly made clear that the simplest and safest option would have been for the government to retain the national requirement for face coverings on public transport. I'm not prepared to stand by and put Londoners, and our city's recovery, at risk. This is why, after careful consideration, I have decided to ask TfL to retain the requirement for passengers to wear a face covering on all TfL services when the national regulations change. By keeping face masks mandatory, we will give Londoners and visitors the reassurance and confidence to make the most of what our city has to offer, while also protecting our heroic transport workers and those who may be vulnerable and rely on the network to get around our city."